Tropical Savannah by Brittany Caton. Savannas are the tropical version of the temperate grasslands. Most savannas are caused by climatic patterns where there is a strong dry season for a large part of the year. Few trees survive in these regions, but most savannas do have some form of trees that scatter the landscape. If you look at the map below, you'll realize that a large part of Africa, nearly half its mass, is covered in some sort of savanna. Large tracts of savanna are also found in South America, India, and Australia. Tropical grasslands are often sandwiched between tropical rainforests, which receive a lot of rainfall year round, and desert biomes, which receive almost no rain at all. They occur in warm regions where there's a very rainy and humid wet season and a drought like and fire prone dry season. The yearly average rainfall is about 30 to 50 inches, but can get up to 70 inches in wetter regions. However, this rainfall is not evenly distributed throughout the year, and dry seasons can see as little as 2 to 4 inches of rain in a 3 to 5 month period. The lack of rain and moisture and the high intense direct light also creates a high evaporation rate in the dry season, causing everything to become even drier. This seasonal difference results in a huge seasonal change in water bodies here. Rivers and wetlands are full in the wet season, flooded even, and some completely dry up in the dry season, leaving little water for plants and animals alike. As mentioned, the temperature here remains fairly stable between seasons, with a maximum of about 2.5 degrees difference between distinct months. However, the daily temperature changes quite drastically, and there can be a 13 to 17 degree difference between night and day. The overall mean temperature is about 77 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, with highs up to 86 degrees and lows of 68 degrees. The extreme differences in precipitation throughout the year is very stressful for plants, as not only do they have to be drought tolerant, but also be able to survive the possibility of too much water once the wetter season comes around. Dealing with these extremes isn't easy for the plants of tropical grasslands, but every species has adaptations to help it survive. Many of the grasses go dormant through the dry season. They also have the capacity to live on very few nutrients by lowering their transpiration rates, the pace that water evaporates out of the leaves. They do not experience as much water loss. Grasses in tropical grasslands are more efficient at water use in general and can adjust their osmotic potential, which is a term to say that they change the nutrient concentrations in their cells to better take up water when there is very little available. To be able to withstand grazing, grasses grow quickly from the bottom up so newer tissues aren't eaten right away, and have lots of their energy stored in their roots, which are not fed on as much as the above ground leaves. To deal with fire, some grasses have rhizomes underground that sprout back easily after a fire. Though there are a few trees, the ones that live here have some key strategies. Some have leaves that fall off during the dry seasons to conserve water, known as drought deciduous trees, like the baobab or Indonesia. Others are evergreen or Cyperus sempervirens that are good at conserving water, like the Acacia wattles. Another limiting factor for the trees is frequent fires. Trees are often vulnerable just because the wet season because they grow new leaves and are already quite stressed. So an intense fire could be too much for them. To help protect against this, mature trees have very thick bark to protect trees against fire's heat. Trees deal with low precipitation by having huge roots that go deep into the ground and even water storage tissues, bulbs, and corms in their trunks. Though they have less control over water efficiency than grasses, some trees close or partially close their stomata at midday when it is hottest to avoid really high transpiration rates. A final important adaptation to make it in the savanna is defense chemicals against the most numerous dangers in the land, herbivores and termites. Animals adapt as a way to solve problems presented in their environment, either from abiotic stress or biological competition. Animals can have three types of adaptations: structural, physiological, and behavioral. The dry season is a difficult time for animals. The fact that many plants go dormant or die in the dry season also means that there's a lack of food, and they also have reduced access to water. They must either find ways to cope with little food and water or migrate to new areas. Many animals and birds migrate during the dry seasons to wetter areas, and they will congregate more heavily around water sources that they would in the wet season. Giraffes or giraffe, for example, do not have to migrate because they have evolved a very long neck that allows them to eat from evergreen treetops. They also have strong lips and long tongues that have impressive control, which helps them eat from plants and thorns and other defenses. On a similar note, these browsers and grazers manage to coexist by having different preferences when it comes to food and where they eat. This is known as niche patrioning. Animals also have to stay cool in the daytime heat. Smaller animals may also reside in burrows to hide from predatory birds that do very well in these large open spaces where they have wide, clear views to search for prey. Hot air updrafts to help them soar in essential resting and nesting sites in the trees that are present. Animals that burrow and some that don't also look for their food below ground when vegetation goes scarce, digging for roots, tubers, and other vegetation that will also have a higher water content than the above ground plant tissue. If you thought the king of the savannah was a lion or Pathedina leo, you are wrong. It is actually a honey badger, or Melovoria capinis. To start, they have small eyes and ears to avoid harm while fighting, as well as a loose yet tough skin that makes it very hard to pin down as they can wiggle out. This feature also helps them almost completely avoid bee stings when it sticks its entire head in a beehive to feed on bee larvae and huggy. Its neck skin is especially thick to avoid throat injury. They also support impressive teeth and claws, which help them to run, burrow, and catch prey. The soil in this biome varies greatly with different types of soil being lithosols, soils, cracking clay, alluvial soils, and deep sand. Lithosoil soil is commonly found in patches around the savanna grassland region and is generally infertile. Cracking clay, because it is washed out in high rainfall times when on the coast, is found inland, holding its moisture for long periods of time and is fairly fertile. Alluvial soils are rich and found in floodplain regions, while red-yellow earths, while deep sand is found on the coast and are typically saline and infertile. The green-colored organisms are producers, or C1, because they gather all the nutrients and glucose to feed to the herbivores and omnivores. They get their energy from the sun. The blue-colored organisms are the C2 part of the food web. These animals are herbivores because they are the only type of organisms that can eat plants. The red colored organisms are the C3 and C4 part of the food web. These animals are carnivores and omnivores. At the top of the food chain is the lion, leopard, and the vulture. The American lion is carnivore because it is mostly hunts zebras, wildebeest, giraffe, and the African rhino. The leopard mainly hunts smaller animals such as antelope, baboons, and warthogs. The vulture is a carnivore and a scavenger because it feeds off of dead organisms and hunts for its prey. A savanna or a grassland biome is home to a number of natural resources, including water, livestock, and lumber in tropical savannas. All are renewable. Northern Australia is home to the largest savanna in the world. It stretches 1,250 miles across the continent and accounts for more than a quarter of all the remaining grasslands that once thrived over Asia, Africa, and South America. The Australian tropical savanna is rich in metal deposits, making it the largest money generator in that part of the country. Metal resources mined in the tropical grassland include silver, gold, tin, nickel, copper, magnesite, and uranium. Phosphate rock, diamonds, limestone, and silica are all mined in the savanna, as are the petroleum and coal. All of these are non-renewable. The vast expansion of grassy vegetation in the eastern South African supports nearly 2 million herbivorous mammals and over 500 species of birds. The grassy landscape is also the location of large deposits of gold and coal. The Eurasian and North American savannas are also known for having shallow formations of petroleum and natural gas. Both are non-renewable. The ever-increasing human habitation, extensive mining, and natural energy explorations threaten to irrevocably modify and damage the natural ecosystem of savannas all around the world. Savannas are threatened by human actions like logging, development, conservation to agriculture, overgrazing by livestock, and introductions of non-native plant species. For example, in the drier parts of the African savanna, overgrazing by goats and cattle has removed most of the vegetation that holds the soil in place. This has created desert-like conditions, and most of the southeastern United States longleaf pine savannas have been affected by logging. The savanna ecosystem can best be saved by putting aside land as preservatives for ecosystems to naturally create large population numbers with little or no human development of buildings or roads or farms. Human influence in the savanna includes includes defeating poachers who cause species extinction of many key organisms, as well as nurturing endangered species through breeding programs. Many conservationists and scientists work in the savanna ecosystem of South of America, Africa, and Asia to make certain that these ecosystems remain healthy and productive.